Sometimes the smallest hand reaching out is enough to change the biggest heart forever. Cold rain swept across the city streets as Emily Brooks tightened her worn gray coat around herself and her 7-year-old daughter, Lily. They stepped quietly out of the side entrance of an elegant downtown hotel, hoping no one would notice them leaving. Emily carried a small canvas bag over one shoulder, its weight far lighter than the burden she refused to let her daughter see. Only minutes earlier she had thanked the hotel manager for his time after learning the housekeeping position had already been filled. She smiled politely, wished everyone a wonderful afternoon, and walked away without asking for sympathy or another chance. Lily looked up at her mother with bright blue eyes that somehow still carried hope despite everything they had been through. "It is okay, Mommy," she whispered as they reached the sidewalk. "We will find another place." Emily gently brushed a strand of blonde hair away from Lily's face and forced herself to smile. "We always do." Across the street, a sleek black sport utility vehicle slowly pulled toward the hotel entrance. Nathan Carter, the 39-year-old founder of Carter Holdings, stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored navy overcoat over his business suit. His 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, hurried beside him holding a small stuffed rabbit she refused to leave at home. Nathan had spent years building one of the country's fastest-growing companies, yet every business success felt strangely empty after losing his wife several years earlier. Since then, every decision he made centered on one promise: giving Sophie a safe, happy childhood. As father and daughter approached the revolving doors, Sophie accidentally dropped her stuffed rabbit onto the rain-soaked pavement. Before Nathan could react, the toy slid beneath a nearby bench. Sophie's face immediately filled with worry. At that same moment, Lily quietly let go of her mother's hand, hurried toward the bench, knelt on the wet sidewalk without hesitation, and carefully reached underneath until she pulled the soaked rabbit back into her arms. Instead of simply handing it over, she gently wiped the rain from its ears with her own sleeve before smiling at Sophie. "He should stay warm," Lily said softly. Sophie hugged the rabbit tightly. "Thank you." Nathan watched the exchange in silence. He noticed the holes beginning to form near Lily's shoes, the faded backpack resting against Emily's shoulder, and the quiet dignity with which Emily thanked her daughter before trying to continue walking without expecting anything in return. Nathan instinctively stepped forward. "Excuse me," he called. Emily stopped but remained cautious. "Yes?" Nathan reached into his coat pocket, intending to offer assistance, yet something in Emily's calm expression made him pause. She was tired, but she was not defeated. She looked like someone determined to carry every burden herself rather than lose her self-respect. Before he could speak again, Lily looked toward Sophie and smiled. "Take good care of him," she said, gently patting the stuffed rabbit one last time. Then she returned to her mother's side, slipped her small hand into Emily's, and together they quietly walked away into the falling rain. Nathan remained standing outside the hotel long after they disappeared around the corner. He could not explain why he kept watching the empty sidewalk, only that something about the little girl's kindness and the quiet strength in her mother's eyes refused to leave his thoughts, and for the first time in many years, an unexpected feeling told him that this brief encounter had not been an accident at all. Emily and Lily continued walking until the bright lights of the downtown hotels disappeared behind them, replaced by quiet residential streets where the rain gradually softened into a gentle mist. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The silence between mother and daughter was never uncomfortable because they had learned long ago that love did not always require words. Emily squeezed Lily's small hand as they crossed an old brick bridge leading toward the modest apartment they rented by the week. It was a single room above a neighborhood bakery, just large enough for 2 narrow beds, a tiny table, and a small window overlooking the alley below. It was not much, but it was clean, warm, and for now, it was home. The moment they stepped inside, Lily carefully removed her damp shoes and immediately reached for a small towel. Instead of drying herself first, she knelt beside her mother's chair and gently wiped the rainwater from Emily's shoes. Emily smiled with quiet surprise. "Sweetheart, you should take care of yourself first." Lily looked up with an innocent smile. "You always take care of me first." Emily felt her heart tighten. She brushed her daughter's blonde hair behind her ear and kissed her forehead. "One day I hope your kindness brings you wonderful people." Lily laughed softly. "Maybe it already did." Emily did not understand what she meant, but the words stayed with her. Across the city, Nathan sat alone inside the spacious dining room of his modern mansion while Sophie quietly colored pictures beside him. Their dinner had been prepared perfectly by the household chef, yet neither of them seemed interested in the expensive meal placed before them. Sophie suddenly looked up from her drawing. "Daddy?" Nathan smiled gently. "Yes?" She held up a picture of two little girls standing together beneath an umbrella. One held a stuffed rabbit. The other smiled beside her mother. "I drew the girl who helped Mr. Buttons today." Nathan studied the drawing carefully. "You remembered her?" Sophie nodded. She looked happy even though her shoes were broken. Nathan lowered his eyes. He had noticed the same thing. Somehow that image continued following him through every meeting and conversation that afternoon. His executive assistant entered carrying several folders. "Sir, tomorrow's schedule begins at 7:30 with the Community Foundation meeting." Nathan nodded absent-mindedly before asking an unexpected question. "Did anyone ever identify the woman and little girl outside the hotel today?" His assistant looked surprised. "No, sir." "Would you like security to investigate?" Nathan remained silent for a moment before slowly shaking his head. "No. They deserve their privacy." Even as he answered, part of him wondered whether he had made the right decision. The following morning Emily woke before sunrise. While Lily still slept peacefully beneath a worn blanket, Emily quietly searched online job listings using an aging laptop with a cracked screen. She submitted application after application, never mentioning her struggles, never asking for special treatment. Before leaving for school, Lily noticed an envelope sitting beside the coffee maker. Inside was exactly $23, the last cash Emily had after paying rent. Emily smiled reassuringly. "We will make it through another week." Lily simply nodded because she trusted her mother completely. At that same hour, Nathan arrived at Carter Holdings for the monthly meeting of his charitable foundation. As executives discussed new education programs and employment initiatives, Nathan found himself distracted. He remembered Emily thanking the hotel manager even after being turned away. He remembered Lily drying the stuffed rabbit before returning it to Sophie. Those small acts of kindness felt strangely more meaningful than every polished presentation unfolding around the conference table. Finally, he interrupted the discussion with an unexpected request. "I want our community employment program expanded immediately," he said calmly. "Not just financial assistance. Real jobs for people trying to rebuild their lives with dignity." The room fell completely silent as every executive turned toward him, unaware that a chance meeting in the rain had quietly begun changing the direction of far more than one family's future. Edit 3 days later, the newly expanded Community Employment Initiative officially opened inside the Carter Foundation headquarters, occupying the first floor of a modern glass building overlooking the city park. Instead of requiring complicated interviews or endless paperwork, the program focused on giving honest people an opportunity to rebuild their lives through meaningful work. Nathan personally instructed his management team to evaluate applicants based on character, determination, and willingness to learn rather than perfect resumes. His executives exchanged surprised glances, but no one questioned the decision. They had never seen him take such a personal interest in one of the foundation's projects. Across town, Emily received an unexpected email inviting her to attend an open hiring event hosted by the Carter Foundation. She almost ignored it, believing someone with her limited experience would never be selected. Lily noticed her hesitation while finishing breakfast before school. "Maybe this one is different," she said with quiet confidence. Emily smiled gently. "Maybe." A few hours later, wearing the same neatly pressed navy blouse she reserved for interviews, Emily entered the bright reception area of the foundation. She immediately noticed something unusual. Every applicant was greeted with respect. Volunteers offered coffee, answered questions patiently, and spoke to everyone with genuine kindness regardless of their appearance. It felt less like a job fair and more like a place where people were remembered instead of judged. Emily quietly completed her application and waited her turn. Meanwhile, Nathan was walking through the building with several department directors, reviewing the first day of the program. As they passed the reception area, his eyes instinctively drifted toward the waiting applicants. Then he stopped. Sitting quietly near the window with a folder resting on her lap was Emily. She had not seen him yet. She simply waited patiently, occasionally glancing at the clock because she needed to return in time to pick up Lily after school. Nathan recognized her immediately. Before anyone could ask why he had stopped walking, he calmly said, "I would like to meet one of today's applicants personally." A few minutes later, Emily entered a modest conference room expecting another routine interview. She looked surprised when Nathan stood to greet her. For a brief moment neither of them spoke. Finally Nathan smiled politely. "We met outside the Grand Lexington Hotel." Emily remembered him instantly. "Your daughter lost her stuffed rabbit." Nathan nodded with a warm smile. "And your daughter reminded mine what kindness looks like." Emily looked slightly embarrassed. "Lily simply did what anyone should do." Nathan noticed the sincerity in her voice. There was no attempt to impress him, no expectation of special treatment. He reviewed her application carefully. "I see you have experience organizing neighborhood food drives and assisting community shelters." Emily answered honestly. "Mostly as a volunteer. They needed help, and I had time to give." Nathan looked up. "Why did you apply here?" Emily hesitated before answering. "Because I need work that allows me to support my daughter honestly. I am not looking for favors. I only want the chance to earn a living." Those words stayed with Nathan. He slowly closed the application folder and said, "The foundation has an opening coordinating community outreach projects. It includes training, full benefits, and flexible hours for parents." Emily immediately shook her head. "Mr. Carter, if this offer is because we met outside the hotel, I cannot accept." Nathan smiled respectfully. "It is because your application demonstrates compassion, reliability, and service. Meeting you earlier simply Remy." Emily's first week at the Carter Foundation passed more quietly than she expected. Instead of assigning her to a comfortable office behind polished glass walls, the foundation placed her directly inside neighborhood outreach programs where volunteers organized food drives, after-school tutoring, and employment workshops for struggling families. Emily welcomed every assignment with quiet determination. She arrived before sunrise, stayed until the final boxes were packed away, and thanked every volunteer before leaving each evening. No one heard her complain, even when unexpected challenges appeared. She simply solved one problem after another with calm patience. Her coworkers quickly noticed something unusual. Emily remembered every family's name after meeting them only once. She always asked children about school before discussing paperwork with their parents. If a volunteer looked overwhelmed, she quietly stepped beside them without being asked. She never searched for recognition. She simply believed kindness worked best when it happened naturally. Nathan occasionally reviewed the outreach reports from his office overlooking the city, and one particular name appeared again and again. Every department manager described Emily using almost identical words. Dependable. Compassionate. Resourceful. Humble. Curious, Nathan decided to visit one of the neighborhood community centers without announcing his arrival. When he entered the bright multipurpose room, he found Emily sitting on the floor beside several children helping them create colorful posters for an upcoming reading event. She laughed as one little boy accidentally covered his own hands with blue paint before carefully helping him clean up the mess. Across the room, elderly volunteers smiled while watching her interact with everyone as though she had been part of the foundation for years. Nathan remained quietly near the entrance, choosing to observe instead of interrupting. Emily had not noticed him yet. Suddenly another familiar voice filled the room. "Daddy." Sophie ran toward him carrying a stack of children's books nearly as tall as she was. Nathan smiled warmly before lifting the books from her arms. You brought the donations yourself? Sophie nodded proudly. I wanted to help. At that moment Lily entered from the reading corner carrying a small box of crayons. The two girls immediately recognized one another. Sophie's face brightened. You are the rabbit girl. Lily laughed softly. And you are Mr. Button's best friend. Within moments the two children were sitting together at a nearby table, coloring pictures and sharing stories as though they had known each other for years. Emily finally looked up and noticed Nathan standing nearby. She rose politely. Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. Nathan smiled. I came to see how the program was doing. I did not expect to find everyone enjoying themselves this much. Emily glanced toward the children. People do their best work when they feel seen. Nathan quietly repeated the sentence in his mind. It sounded simple, yet it explained something many expensive leadership seminars never had. As the afternoon continued, he watched Lily patiently help Sophie finish a drawing after one of her crayons broke. Neither child argued over colors or supplies. They naturally shared everything. Watching them together stirred a feeling Nathan had not experienced in years. His daughter looked happier than she had in a long time. Before leaving, Sophie tugged gently on Nathan's sleeve. Daddy, can Lily come again next Saturday? Nathan looked toward Emily before answering. Emily smiled gently at Lily, who waited hopefully without saying a word. If there is another community event and our schedule allows, Emily replied, I think she would love that. Sophie clapped excitedly while Lily's quiet smile grew even brighter. Nathan walked back toward his car with an unexpected sense of peace. Bizen. As autumn settled over the city, the Carter Foundation became busier than ever. Community centers prepared for seasonal food programs, volunteers organized clothing drives, and dozens of families visited every week searching not only for assistance but also for hope. Emily embraced every responsibility with quiet dedication, often arriving before sunrise to prepare schedules before anyone else entered the office. She believed every family deserved to be welcomed with dignity, no matter how difficult their circumstances might be. Lily spent her afternoons at the children's activity room whenever Emily finished work, and before long Sophie began asking to join her after school. The two girls quickly became inseparable. They built cardboard castles, read storybooks together, and laughed over simple board games while volunteers watched with warm smiles. Nathan occasionally paused outside the activity room during his meetings just to observe the girls. Sophie had become noticeably happier since meeting Lily. Her laughter echoed through the hallways in a way Nathan had not heard since before losing his wife. One afternoon Emily finished organizing food donations earlier than expected and quietly walked toward the activity room. Before entering, she noticed Nathan kneeling beside the girls as they carefully assembled a puzzle spread across the floor. He was not acting like a billionaire executive. He was simply a father patiently helping two children search for missing pieces. Sophie looked up and smiled. Daddy is terrible at puzzles. Nathan laughed. I am much better with company reports. Lily giggled before handing him the final puzzle piece. Then maybe we should help each other. Nathan accepted it with exaggerated gratitude, making both girls laugh even harder. Emily remained near the doorway for a moment, unexpectedly touched by the ordinary scene unfolding before her. She had spent years believing wealthy people lived completely different lives, yet watching Nathan comfort his daughter reminded her that grief and love belonged to everyone regardless of social status. Later that afternoon Nathan invited Emily to review plans for an upcoming family outreach event. They sat together in a quiet conference room overlooking the park while discussing volunteer assignments. As they worked through the schedule, Nathan noticed Emily repeatedly suggesting ideas that placed families' emotional needs before logistical convenience. Instead of asking where children could wait while parents attended workshops, she proposed creating interactive reading corners so families could stay together. Instead of serving boxed lunches, she suggested community tables where strangers could comfortably share conversations. Nathan looked at the notes she had written across the margins. You think about people before procedures. Emily smiled modestly. When someone is struggling, feeling welcome is often more important than receiving assistance. Nathan slowly nodded. That explains why everyone trusts you so quickly. Emily looked slightly embarrassed. I simply remember what it felt like when no one noticed us. Those words stayed with Nathan long after the meeting ended. Meanwhile, across the executive offices, Victoria Hayes watched the growing admiration surrounding Emily with increasing discomfort. As the Foundation's Senior Development Director, Victoria had expected to become Nathan's closest professional partner. Instead, she found employees constantly praising the new outreach coordinator whose greatest strength seemed to be simple kindness rather than polished presentations. She quietly observed Nathan thanking Emily after meetings, noticed Sophie eagerly asking whether Lily would visit again, and sensed a change she could not ignore. Although she remained perfectly courteous whenever Emily entered the room, a quiet jealousy had already begun taking root beneath her composed smile. That evening, after Emily and Lily returned to their small apartment above the bakery, Lily carefully placed 2 handmade friendship bracelets on the kitchen table. One was blue for Sophie. The other was green for Nathan because, as Lily explained with complete sincerity, good fathers deserve presents too. Emily smiled gently while helping her daughter finish the tiny knots. Neither of them realized that those simple bracelets would soon become symbols of trust during a time when appearances would begin hiding far more than the truth. The annual Autumn Family Festival organized by the Carter Foundation quickly became the largest community event of the season. Hundreds of families gathered in the city park beneath colorful trees as volunteers prepared reading tents, health screenings, music performances, and activity booths for children. Emily arrived before sunrise carrying schedules, supply lists, and a large thermos of homemade hot chocolate she planned to share with volunteers working outside in the chilly morning air. She quietly greeted every staff member by name before checking each station one final time. Nathan arrived shortly afterward with Sophie, who immediately ran toward Lily carrying the blue friendship bracelet Lily had made several days earlier. I wear it every day, Sophie said proudly, lifting her wrist. Lily smiled with genuine happiness before handing Nathan the green bracelet she had carefully wrapped in brown paper. This one is for you, she said shyly. Nathan knelt to her eye level and accepted the simple gift with surprising emotion. Thank you, Lily. I will treasure it. Without hesitation, he tied the small woven bracelet around his wrist beside his expensive watch. Several volunteers smiled as they noticed the contrast between the priceless timepiece and the handmade gift. Emily looked slightly embarrassed. She spent 3 evenings making that. Nathan glanced at the bracelet before answering quietly. Then it may be the most valuable thing I own today. Throughout the morning the festival unfolded beautifully. Children laughed while painting pumpkins, grandparents shared stories inside the reading tent, and local musicians filled the park with warm acoustic melodies. Emily moved constantly from one activity to another, helping elderly visitors find seats, comforting nervous children before health checkups, and quietly solving dozens of small problems before anyone else even noticed them. Nathan watched from a distance during several moments, increasingly impressed by how naturally people gravitated toward her. She never tried to become the center of attention, yet every corner of the event somehow felt calmer after she arrived. Meanwhile, Victoria stood beside several corporate sponsors greeting reporters with polished confidence. She noticed photographers repeatedly capturing candid moments of Emily laughing with children instead of the carefully staged promotional photographs she had arranged. The attention irritated her far more than she expected. During a break, she approached one of the event coordinators with a pleasant smile. Emily certainly seems comfortable around Mr. Carter lately, she remarked casually. The coordinator answered without suspicion. Everyone enjoys working together. Victoria simply nodded while quietly storing the observation away. Later that afternoon, Nathan joined Emily near the food distribution area where volunteers were preparing additional meals after attendance exceeded expectations. He noticed Emily quietly setting aside 2 containers before anyone else entered the serving line. Are those reserved? He asked. Emily smiled gently. For the elderly couple living 3 blocks away. They cannot walk this far anymore, so I always stop by after events. Nathan looked at her with quiet admiration. You planned for them before planning for yourself. Emily shrugged modestly. They remind me of my grandparents. Nathan offered to help carry the meals, but Emily politely declined. You should stay with Sophie. She has been smiling all day. Nathan watched his daughter laughing beside Lily beneath a large maple tree. I have not seen her this happy in a very long time. Emily followed his gaze with a soft smile. Children have a beautiful way of healing each other. Neither of them noticed Victoria standing several yards away observing the conversation. Her composed expression remained unchanged, but inside she had already begun convincing herself that Emily's growing closeness to Nathan threatened everything she had carefully planned for her own future. As the festival ended beneath a golden sunset, Nathan glanced once more at the simple green bracelet wrapped around his wrist and realized it had quietly become a daily reminder that the greatest gifts in life were almost never the ones money could buy. Several weeks after the Autumn Family Festival, the Carter Foundation had become noticeably different. Volunteers arrived earlier, community participation continued growing, and new outreach programs expanded into neighboring districts. Nathan often credited the entire team during meetings, but privately he knew one person had quietly transformed the atmosphere more than anyone else. Emily had a remarkable ability to make every family feel respected before offering them assistance. Her calm presence spread naturally through every project she touched. One crisp Saturday morning, the foundation organized a neighborhood reading day inside a renovated community library. While children gathered around colorful bookshelves listening to volunteers read stories aloud, Nathan noticed Sophie searching the room. Where is Lily? She asked with disappointment. Emily smiled gently. She is helping Mrs. Henderson upstairs. Curious, Nathan followed Emily to the second floor. There he found Lily patiently carrying stacks of donated books beside an elderly volunteer whose hands trembled slightly with age. The books were clearly heavier than Lily should have been lifting, yet she never complained. Instead she smiled warmly each time Mrs. Henderson thanked her. Nathan quietly stepped forward. Those books look a little heavy. Lily looked up and laughed softly. Mrs. Henderson says teamwork makes everything lighter. Nathan immediately picked up the remaining boxes. Mrs. Henderson smiled knowingly. Your daughter has wonderful manners. Nathan glanced toward Sophie playing downstairs before gently correcting her. She is not my daughter. The elderly volunteer smiled again. Perhaps not today. The simple words lingered in Nathan's thoughts far longer than he expected. Later that afternoon Emily noticed Lily sitting alone near one of the library windows, carefully repairing a torn children's picture book with clear tape. Sweetheart, Emily asked, why are you fixing that? Lily looked up innocently. Someone else might love this story one day. Emily quietly hugged her daughter, overwhelmed by how naturally kindness seemed to shape every decision Lily made. Nearby, Nathan had unintentionally overheard the conversation. He realized Lily never expected rewards or praise. She simply believed small acts of care mattered. That evening, after the volunteers finished cleaning the library, Nathan invited Emily to join him for coffee in the foundation's modest staff lounge while the girls finished coloring together. They spoke not about business but about parenting. Nathan admitted that after losing his wife, he often questioned whether he was raising Sophie well enough. Emily listened without interrupting before answering softly. Children do not remember perfect parents. They remember parents who made them feel safe. Nathan looked at her thoughtfully. Where did you learn that? Emily smiled with quiet sadness. Life teaches different lessons to different people. Before Nathan could ask anything more, Emily's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen for only a second before placing it back into her pocket. Her smile faded almost imperceptibly. Nathan noticed the change immediately. Is everything all right? Emily answered gently. Just an old memory trying to find me again. She quickly changed the subject, unwilling to burden anyone with her past. Nathan respected her silence, but curiosity quietly settled into his heart. Meanwhile, Victoria happened to walk past the lounge while delivering paperwork to another department. Through the glass wall she saw Nathan and Emily sharing an honest conversation while Sophie and Lily laughed together nearby. From a distance, the scene resembled something far more personal than a routine workplace discussion. Victoria stood motionless for several seconds before continuing down the hallway. A quiet determination began replacing her earlier jealousy. If Emily continued earning Nathan's trust, Victoria feared she would lose far more than professional influence. She decided that simply watching events unfold was no longer enough. As evening settled over the city, Nathan drove Sophie home wearing the small green friendship bracelet Lily had given him weeks earlier. Sophie noticed it while fastening her seatbelt and smiled. "You still wear it?" Nathan looked at the simple woven threads wrapped around his wrist. "Some gifts remind us what truly matters." Neither father nor daughter realized that the peaceful season they had been enjoying was about to be tested by secrets from the past that had quietly waited for the perfect moment to return. The following Monday began like every other busy morning at the Carter Foundation. Volunteers arrived carrying donated winter coats, community partners prepared meeting rooms, and children filled the activity center with cheerful voices before school. Emily organized the day's outreach schedule while quietly checking every appointment one final time. She believed careful preparation showed respect for the people counting on the foundation. Lily sat nearby finishing her homework before joining Sophie in the children's reading room later that afternoon. Everything felt comfortably familiar until the receptionist approached Emily holding a sealed envelope. "This was delivered for you a few minutes ago," she said politely. Emily thanked her and slipped the envelope into her folder without opening it. Something about the unfamiliar handwriting immediately unsettled her. Across the building, Nathan was meeting with department directors to review plans for the foundation's expanding winter programs. Victoria listened attentively while contributing polished suggestions, yet her attention repeatedly drifted toward the conference room windows overlooking the main lobby. She noticed Emily quietly placing the envelope into her bag and a faint smile appeared across her face before disappearing just as quickly. After the meeting ended, Nathan happened to cross paths with Emily near the elevator. He immediately sensed that something had changed. "You seem distracted today," he said gently. Emily forced a reassuring smile. "It is nothing important. Just a personal matter." Nathan respected her privacy, but the concern in her eyes remained with him long after she walked away. During lunch, Emily finally opened the envelope while sitting alone on a quiet bench overlooking the foundation garden. Inside she found a short handwritten note with no signature. The message simply read, "Some people eventually discover that the past cannot stay hidden forever. Think carefully before becoming too comfortable." Emily slowly folded the paper and closed her eyes. The words awakened memories she had spent years trying to leave behind. She took a deep breath, placed the note back inside the envelope, and returned to work without telling anyone. Her decision reflected the same quiet strength that had carried her through every hardship. She refused to allow fear to interfere with families depending on the foundation. That afternoon, Sophie and Lily prepared handmade decorations for the children's holiday celebration. They laughed together while cutting colorful paper snowflakes, completely unaware of the invisible tension surrounding the adults. Nathan entered the activity room carrying a box of art supplies and immediately noticed Lily's cheerful smile. Somehow seeing the children happy eased his own growing concern. Emily joined them a few moments later, carefully hiding every trace of worry behind her familiar kindness. Sophie proudly showed her a paper snowflake. "Do you think Daddy can hang this in his office?" Emily smiled warmly. "I think he would be lucky to have it there." Nathan accepted the decoration with genuine gratitude and carefully placed it inside his notebook for safekeeping. Watching the simple exchange, Victoria quietly observed from the hallway. She had expected the anonymous message to shake Emily far more than it appeared to have done. Instead, Emily continued helping everyone around her exactly as before. Victoria realized she would need something stronger if she intended to create distance between Emily and Nathan. That evening, after returning home, Emily tucked Lily into bed before sitting alone beside the apartment window overlooking the quiet street below. She removed the anonymous note once more and stared at the unfamiliar handwriting. Not again, she whispered softly to herself. She carefully placed the letter inside an old wooden keepsake box containing only a few precious memories from happier days, then locked it away. At that same moment, Nathan stood inside his mansion helping Sophie hang the paper snowflake above her bedroom desk. Sophie smiled brightly. Lily says every snowflake is different because every person matters. Nathan looked thoughtfully at the delicate decoration gently moving in the evening breeze from the open window. He could not explain why, but an uneasy feeling told him that someone was trying to bring darkness into the peaceful life Emily had worked so hard to rebuild, and he silently promised himself that if she ever needed help, this time he would not simply stand and watch. The holiday season arrived with crisp mornings, glowing storefront windows, and the quiet excitement of families preparing for celebrations together. Inside the Carter Foundation, volunteers decorated the lobby with evergreen wreaths, handmade ornaments created by neighborhood children, and hundreds of paper snowflakes hanging from the ceiling. One of Sophie's carefully folded snowflakes rested beside Lily's, their names written neatly in small letters across the bottom. Nathan smiled every time he walked beneath them. The building no longer felt like a corporate foundation. It felt like a place where people genuinely belonged. Emily continued leading the community outreach programs with the same humility that had earned everyone's respect. She never mentioned the anonymous letter again, convincing herself that the past would remain exactly where it belonged. Yet unknown to her, Victoria had quietly begun spreading subtle questions among a few influential board members. She never made direct accusations. Instead, she planted carefully chosen doubts. "Do we really know much about Emily's background?" she asked one executive over coffee. She appeared rather suddenly. Another afternoon she casually wondered whether the foundation's growing public image could be affected if hidden personal issues ever surfaced. Her words sounded concerned rather than malicious, making them even more effective. Nathan remained completely unaware of those quiet conversations. His attention was focused on preparing the Foundation's annual Winter Hope celebration, the largest fundraising event of the year. Families who had benefited from the Foundation's programs would attend alongside donors, community leaders, and local business partners. Nathan wanted the evening to celebrate ordinary people whose courage often went unnoticed. Several days before the event, Emily stayed late organizing gift packages for children. Long after most employees had gone home, Nathan walked through the volunteer center carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. He placed one gently beside Emily's paperwork. She looked up with surprised gratitude. "You remembered I never drink coffee." Nathan smiled. "You once mentioned it during your first week." Emily looked at him quietly, touched that he had remembered such a small detail. They worked together in comfortable silence while wrapping presents for children they would probably never meet. Finally Nathan asked softly, "Do you ever regret always putting other people first?" Emily paused before answering. "Sometimes it is exhausting. But I never regret helping someone feel less alone." Nathan lowered his eyes. "I think you have done that for more people than you realize." Before Emily could respond, Lily and Sophie ran into the room carrying a large handmade card covered with colorful drawings. "It is for everyone who does not have family nearby," Sophie explained proudly. Lily nodded. "Nobody should feel forgotten during Christmas." Nathan looked at the 2 girls and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Their friendship had quietly brought warmth back into a home that grief had left painfully silent. Across the hallway, Victoria watched the scene through a partially open doorway. Seeing Nathan laughing so naturally with Emily and the children confirmed what she had feared for weeks. If nothing changed, Emily would become far more than an employee in Nathan's life. Later that evening Victoria made a private telephone call after leaving the office. "I need everything you can find about Emily Brooks," she said calmly. "Old records, former employers, anything connected to her past." She ended the call with quiet confidence, believing every person carried secrets waiting to be uncovered. Meanwhile Emily walked home beside Lily beneath softly falling snow. Lily slipped her small hand into her mother's and smiled. "This has been our happiest Christmas ever." Emily looked up at the glowing city lights and silently hoped her daughter was right. She wanted nothing more than a peaceful future built through honest work and simple kindness. Neither of them realized that someone had already begun searching through years of forgotten memories, determined to turn the past into a weapon. Far away, Nathan stood alone inside the darkened foundation lobby after everyone had left, looking up at the paper snowflakes hanging overhead. He gently touched the green friendship bracelet still wrapped around his wrist and quietly wondered why an uneasy feeling continued growing stronger with every passing day, as though happiness itself was preparing to face its greatest test. The evening of the Winter Hope celebration arrived beneath a sky filled with softly falling snow as the Carter Foundation welcomed hundreds of guests into its beautifully decorated grand hall. Warm golden lights reflected from towering Christmas trees covered with handmade ornaments created by children from every neighborhood program the foundation had supported throughout the year. Families, volunteers, community leaders, and generous donors gathered not to celebrate wealth, but to celebrate compassion. Nathan stood near the entrance greeting every guest personally rather than leaving the responsibility to assistants. Sophie proudly wore the blue friendship bracelet Lily had made for her, while the green bracelet still rested quietly beside Nathan's watch. Across the room Emily carefully coordinated volunteers, making certain every family felt comfortable before thinking about herself. Lily moved from table to table delivering small handmade holiday cards to elderly guests who had arrived alone, earning grateful smiles wherever she went. Watching the little girl quietly brighten complete strangers' evenings filled Nathan with admiration once again. As dinner concluded, Nathan stepped onto the stage to thank everyone who had helped make the foundation's work possible. Instead of speaking about financial contributions, he praised volunteers, teachers, parents, and children whose kindness had transformed lives. He then invited Emily to join him on stage to recognize the outreach team for months of dedicated service. The audience responded with warm applause as Emily reluctantly approached the podium, clearly uncomfortable being the center of attention. Before she could speak, however, a member of the foundation's administrative staff hurried toward Nathan carrying a sealed envelope marked confidential. "This was delivered only moments ago," the employee whispered. Nathan glanced at the envelope but quietly placed it aside, determined not to interrupt the celebration. Unfortunately, someone else had already anticipated that decision. Moments later several members of the board quietly received identical anonymous packets delivered to their tables. Curious expressions spread throughout the ballroom as they opened the envelopes. Inside were copies of several years-old legal documents showing that Emily had once been involved in a lengthy civil lawsuit concerning financial responsibility after the closure of a small family business. The documents included no explanation of the circumstances, only carefully selected pages designed to create the worst possible impression. Soft whispers gradually spread across the room. Emily immediately recognized the papers from where she stood. The color slowly faded from her face. She understood exactly what someone was trying to accomplish. Nathan looked toward her with growing concern before quickly taking one of the packets from a nearby board member. He read the first page carefully, then looked back at Emily instead of the documents. "Would you like to explain this?" he asked quietly, making certain only she could hear. Emily lowered her eyes. "Not tonight." There was no fear in her voice, only sadness. "These papers do not tell the whole story, but this evening should belong to the families, not to me." Nathan studied her expression for several long seconds. He had spent months watching Emily place everyone else before herself. Nothing about the woman standing before him resembled the picture these anonymous documents attempted to create. Without another word he calmly folded the papers, returned to the microphone, and smiled warmly at the audience. "Every person in this room has overcome challenges that cannot be summarized on a single piece of paper," he said. "Tonight we celebrate character, not rumors." The ballroom gradually grew quiet once again. Emily looked at Nathan with genuine surprise. He had chosen trust before demanding explanations. Across the hall Victoria maintained a carefully composed expression while hiding her disappointment. She had expected uncertainty to separate them. Instead Nathan's quiet confidence had only strengthened the respect many people already felt toward Emily. Yet Victoria remained convinced the full truth, whatever it might be, would eventually destroy the fragile peace surrounding them. As the celebration continued, Emily quietly slipped outside into the falling snow for a moment alone. Nathan noticed her absence almost immediately. Looking toward the grand entrance, he gently removed the green bracelet from beneath his coat sleeve, glanced at it thoughtfully, and without hesitation followed her into the silent winter night, knowing that some conversations mattered far more than any speech he could ever deliver. Snow continued falling gently across the foundation courtyard as Emily stepped outside the grand hall, wrapping her coat more tightly around herself while trying to steady the emotions she had worked so hard to keep hidden. The cheerful sounds of holiday music drifted faintly through the windows behind her, creating a striking contrast to the quiet sadness she carried alone. She walked toward a small stone bench overlooking the frozen garden where strings of white lights reflected softly across the snow. For several peaceful moments she simply stood there, breathing slowly, grateful that Lily remained inside laughing with Sophie instead of witnessing another painful reminder of the past. A few moments later she heard careful footsteps approaching behind her. Nathan stopped several feet away, giving her the space she deserved. Neither of them spoke immediately. Finally Nathan broke the silence. "I did not come to ask about those papers." Emily looked at him with quiet surprise. "Most people would." Nathan smiled gently. "Most people have not spent months watching you put everyone else before yourself." Emily lowered her eyes. The kindness in his voice somehow made holding back tears even more difficult. After a long pause she whispered, "The documents are real." Nathan nodded calmly. "I assumed they were." Emily looked confused. "You are not going to ask what happened?" Nathan answered honestly. "Only if you decide the story is yours to tell." She sat slowly on the stone bench, staring at the snow gathering around her shoes. "Years ago my father owned a small neighborhood bookstore. It was never wealthy, but it gave our family a simple, happy life. When he became seriously ill, he borrowed money trying to keep the business alive while paying medical bills. After he passed away, I inherited responsibilities I never expected." Nathan listened without interrupting. Emily continued quietly. "The business eventually closed. Some creditors believed I should remain financially responsible even after everything had already been sold. The lawsuit lasted nearly 2 years. In the end the court determined I had acted honestly, but by then my savings were gone and my reputation had already been damaged." She smiled sadly. People rarely remember how a story ends. They remember the accusation. Nathan remained silent for several moments before sitting beside her. "Why did you never tell anyone here?" Emily looked toward the brightly lit foundation building where volunteers continued celebrating. "Because I wanted people to know my work before they judged my past." Nathan nodded slowly. "That is exactly what happened." Emily looked at him. "Except now everyone has questions again." Nathan gently removed the folded anonymous documents from his coat pocket. Without saying another word, he placed them on the bench between them. Then he calmly folded the pages into smaller pieces before placing them into a nearby recycling container. "Paper does not decide a person's character," he said softly. "Time does. Actions do." Emily stared at him, overwhelmed by the simple confidence behind those words. At that same moment, inside the foundation, Sophie and Lily searched for the adults after noticing they had disappeared. Holding hands, they looked through the large windows overlooking the courtyard. Sophie smiled when she saw Nathan and Emily quietly talking beneath the falling snow. "They look less lonely together," she whispered. Lily nodded with innocent certainty. "Sometimes people need someone who believes them before they believe themselves." Back inside the ballroom, Victoria noticed the 2 children smiling toward the courtyard. Curious, she followed their gaze and immediately saw Nathan sitting beside Emily. Instead of creating distance, the anonymous documents had led him directly to her. For the first time that evening, uncertainty replaced Victoria's confidence. Meanwhile Nathan rose from the bench and offered Emily a warm smile. "Come back inside," he said gently. "The families came here to celebrate hope, and you have given them more hope than anyone in that building." Emily looked once more at the softly falling snow before accepting his invitation. As they walked side by side toward the warmly lit entrance, neither of them noticed that the greatest truth about Emily's past had still not been discovered, and when it finally came to light, it would change far more lives than either of them could possibly imagine. The days following the Winter Hope celebration brought an unexpected sense of calm to the Carter Foundation. Instead of allowing rumors to spread, Nathan quietly continued treating Emily with the same respect and trust he had always shown her. He never mentioned the anonymous documents during staff meetings, never questioned her integrity in front of others, and never allowed whispered speculation to influence the work that mattered most. His consistency spoke more loudly than any public statement could have. Emily noticed his quiet support but chose not to draw attention to it. She simply continued arriving early each morning, organizing outreach visits, mentoring new volunteers, and helping families prepare for the coldest weeks of winter. One afternoon Samuel, Nathan's longtime legal advisor and trusted friend, entered Nathan's office carrying a slim folder. "I asked our legal department to review the documents distributed at the celebration," he said calmly. Nathan looked up with quiet interest. Samuel continued, "The lawsuit was real, but the anonymous packets omitted the court's final decision. Emily was completely cleared of personal liability. In fact, the judge specifically noted that she acted responsibly throughout the entire process." Nathan slowly closed his eyes for a moment. He had believed Emily from the beginning, but seeing the complete truth brought him an even deeper sense of admiration. Samuel opened the folder once more. "There is something else." During the final months before the bookstore closed, Emily quietly sold nearly everything she owned to continue paying her father's employees until they found new jobs. Several former workers later submitted written statements thanking her for protecting their families during that difficult time. Nathan remained silent. The room suddenly felt much quieter than before. "She never told anyone," he whispered. Samuel smiled gently. "People who do good for recognition usually mention it. People who do good because it is part of who they are often remain silent." That evening Nathan drove alone to the small neighborhood where Emily and Lily lived. He did not stop at their apartment or announce his arrival. Instead he visited the old bookstore building Samuel had located through public records. The windows were empty now, and a faded sign still hung above the entrance. An elderly florist working next door noticed him looking through the glass. "You knew the Brooks family?" she asked kindly. Nathan admitted he was only learning about them. The florist smiled with warm memories. "Emily was one of the finest young women this neighborhood has ever known. After her father became ill, she worked all day, cared for him every evening, and still found time to read stories to children every Saturday. When the bookstore finally closed, she apologized to every customer as though she had somehow failed them. She carried more responsibility than anyone should at that age." Nathan thanked the woman before quietly leaving. As he drove home through the softly falling snow, every small act of kindness he had witnessed over the past months suddenly formed one complete picture. Emily had never become compassionate because life had been easy. She had become compassionate because she understood what hardship felt like. Meanwhile, Victoria sat alone inside her office reviewing the investigation she had ordered. The final report disappointed her completely. Instead of exposing dishonesty, it revealed years of sacrifice, integrity, and quiet generosity. For the first time, she began questioning her own choices. She looked at the empty office around her and realized that ambition without kindness had quietly left her more isolated than she had ever admitted. Across town, Sophie and Lily sat together assembling another puzzle while Emily prepared dinner in the small apartment kitchen. Sophie looked toward Emily with a hopeful smile. "My father says brave people keep choosing kindness even after difficult days." Emily paused before quietly answering, "Your father is becoming a very wise man." At that same moment Nathan stood in his mansion holding the green friendship bracelet once again. Looking at the simple woven threads, he realized they had become a daily reminder of the family he had never expected to find, and he silently promised himself that whatever the future held, He would protect the trust Emily and Lily had placed in him with the same unwavering loyalty they had shown everyone around them. Spring arrived with fresh blossoms lining the streets and warm sunlight replacing the long winter that had quietly transformed so many lives. Nearly a year had passed since Emily and Lily first walked away from the luxury hotel in the rain believing no one would ever notice them. Now the Carter Foundation stood before its newest achievement, a beautiful community learning and family resource center built to provide education, employment support, childcare, and counseling for families beginning again after difficult seasons. Hundreds of guests gathered for the opening ceremony, but the atmosphere felt remarkably different from the glamorous charity events Nathan had once attended. Instead of celebrities seeking attention, the front rows were filled with teachers, volunteers, grandparents, children, and families whose lives had been changed through simple acts of compassion. Nathan welcomed every guest personally while wearing the same green friendship bracelet Lily had woven months earlier. Though the threads had faded slightly with time, he had never removed it. Nearby, Sophie proudly held Lily's hand as they prepared to help cut the ceremonial ribbon together. Emily stood quietly among the foundation staff, still uncomfortable with recognition despite everything she had accomplished. When Nathan stepped onto the stage, the audience expected another speech about expansion plans and charitable investments. Instead, he smiled warmly and spoke from the heart. "A year ago I believed changing lives required extraordinary resources. I was wrong. Real change often begins with ordinary kindness offered at exactly the right moment. This center exists because countless people chose compassion over judgment, hope over fear, and service over recognition." He paused before looking toward Emily. Sometimes the strongest leaders are not the ones standing behind microphones. They are the people who quietly lift others every single day without asking for applause. Emily lowered her eyes, deeply moved by his words. The audience responded with heartfelt applause, but Nathan was not finished. He invited Emily, Lily, Sophie, longtime volunteers, and several neighborhood families onto the stage beside him. "No building deserves to open because of one person's success," he said. "It opens because a community built it together." As the children counted down together, the ribbon was gently cut, and cheers filled the spring air. Inside the new center, the first visitors explored bright classrooms, reading corners, family meeting spaces, and cheerful play areas already filled with books and artwork donated by local schools. Emily watched Lily and Sophie race toward the children's library exactly as they had done countless times before. Their laughter echoed through the building, reminding everyone why the center had been created. Later that afternoon, after the celebration ended and the final guests departed, Nathan and Emily stood together outside beneath flowering trees while the girls chased butterflies across the open lawn. Neither hurried to speak. Finally Nathan smiled gently. "The first time I saw Lily, she returned a stuffed rabbit without expecting anything in return." Emily laughed softly. "She still believes kindness always comes back." Nathan looked toward the children before quietly answering, "I think she was right." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I do not know what tomorrow will bring, and I do not want to rush anything. But I do know that wherever life leads us, I hope we keep building places like this together." Emily looked at him with calm confidence, no longer carrying the fear that had once followed her everywhere. "I would like that," she said warmly. Their hands found each other naturally, not through dramatic promises, but through quiet trust that had grown one honest day at a time. As the afternoon sunlight bathed the new community center in golden light, Lily and Sophie ran back toward Th.